Side-scrolling arcade brawlers ruled the 80s and 90s. From dimly lit arcades packed with kids pumping quarters into machines to today's flashy reboots soaked in nostalgia. This is the history of side-scrolling beat-em-ups from Double Dragon to Marvel Cosmic Invasion. Let's go back to 1984. The Los Angeles Raiders win the Super Bowl. Apple introduces the Macintosh personal computer. Karma Chameleon and Purple Rain dominate the Billboard charts. Spinal Tap cranks it up to 11, while theaters jam full for The Terminator and Beverly Hills Cop. And in the arcades, kids become the Kung Fu Master, a single hero battling waves of enemies. The first true side-scrolling beat-em-up in arcades. Kung Fu Master was directed by Takashi Nishiyama, who would later go on to create Street Fighter at Capcom. Kung Fu Master, a single player with simple controls, but it laid the foundation. (1987) was a monster year for the arcade scene. Sega was blowing minds with Afterburner and Shinobi. Irem dropped R-Type, one of the toughest shooters ever made. Konami unleashed Contra, a legend of run-and-gun chaos. Even Capcom's very first Street Fighter hit arcades. 1987 was arcade madness, and then came Double Dragon. And it didn't just stand alongside those classics, it carved out an entirely new lane, the co-op beat-em-up. Double Dragon changed everything. Two-player co-op, weapons you could pick up and use on enemies in those gritty urban streets. Double Dragon was the blueprint that would dominate the next decade, the golden age of arcade side-scrollers. Ah, the golden age. It's literally impossible to think about this era of arcade beat-em-ups and not smile a bit. Literally. Final Fight hit arcades in December 1989. Developed and published by Capcom, Final Fight was originally being developed as Street Fighter 89, a sequel to the first Street Fighter, before Capcom shifted the design towards a brawler and renamed it Final Fight. Final Fight was an evolutionary leap for beat-em-ups, a turning point in the genre. Characters were huge, they were colorful. The blue guy, red guy clones, they were replaced with unique characters, each with their own fighting style. Hagar, pro wrestling style grappler. The balanced Cody, the fast and agile guy. The combat delivered more depth and variety. You could grab enemies, you could perform throws, you could use area clearing specials. Final Fight added larger levels, they added cutscenes and story setup. They gave the game a sense of purpose. It wasn't just fighting endless waves, there was a narrative drive. Art direction, soundtrack, enemy variety, it was a complete premium experience, and it became the template for the 90s Capcom beat-em-up style, featuring games like Captain Commando, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, and Alien vs. Predator, and also paving the way for the licensed games that ruled the arcade's golden age. Konami led the charge with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in 1989. Four-player co-op, colorful stages, ripped straight from the cartoon, and waves of foot soldiers to smash. This cabinet was a magnet. Everyone wanted in. Then came The Simpsons in 91 and X-Men in 1992. Same energy, bigger spectacle. Licensed games were no longer cheap tie-ins, they were arcade events. Dropping a quarter meant joining a Saturday morning cartoon come to life. Even Marvel jumped in early with Captain America and the Avengers in 1991. Captain America, Iron Man, Hawkeye, and Vision fighting side by side against Red Skull's dark forces, mixing classic brawling with shooter-style stages. From 1989 to 1992, arcades were dominated by these heavy-hitting licenses. For a few golden years, it felt like every cartoon, comic, and movie was destined for a coin-op brawler. Like all golden ages, this one didn't last. By the mid-90s, the arcade landscape was changing fast. Home consoles like the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis brought brawlers into living rooms with hits like Streets of Rage and Final Fight ports. But the real knockout blow was 3D fighters. Games like Tekken and Virtua Fighter make the classic side-scroller feel dated overnight. The crowded arcade cabinets started to empty out, and the licensed beat-em-ups that once ruled the scene began to fade into memory. By the mid-90s, the writing was on the wall. Arcades were struggling. Home consoles were catching up fast. The Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis gave players polished experiences like Streets of Rage 2. You didn't need quarters to play a brawler anymore. You could do it in your living room. Meanwhile, 3D graphics were taking over. Virtua Fighter in 93, Tekken in 94, these games made the old pixel brawlers look dated. Players wanted depth, combos, and competitive play. Side-scrollers suddenly felt like yesterday's news. Devs still pushed out late-era gems like Capcom's Alien vs. Predator in 1994 and Cadillacs and Dinosaurs that same year. They were big and they were flashy. Some fans even consider them the peak of arcade beat-em-ups, but it was clear the audience was shrinking. By the late 90s, the side-scrolling brawler had all but disappeared from arcades. A few stubbornly clung on, but the golden age was over. Sure, the golden age was over, but genres don't really die, they hibernate. In the 2000s, a new generation of developers, inspired by the games they grew up with, started bringing brawlers back. Not in arcades, but on home consoles and digital platforms. This time, the indie scene would lead the charge. 2008's Castle Crashers was a revelation. 4-player co-op, over-the-top moves, quirky humor, and RPG mechanics. It captured the spirit of the arcades while giving it a fresh twist, proving that modern gamers still craved pixel-perfect beat-em-ups. Other indie gems like Fightin' Rage and River City Girls pushed the envelope further, blending retro visuals with modern design and accessibility. This wave of indie brawlers rekindled the love for side-scrollers and set the stage for studios dedicated to perfecting the formula. One studio in particular would become synonymous with this modern revival: Tribute Games. Founded in Montreal in 2011 by ex-Ubisoft developers, they built a reputation for pixel-perfect action and faithful nods to the classics. With titles like Mercenary Kings and Panzer Paladin, Tribute Games combine nostalgia with polish. And their crowning achievement, TMNT, Shredder's Revenge, brought the golden age of arcade brawlers into the 2020s with stunning animation, online co-op, and a love letter to the originals. Tribute Games showed that side-scrollers weren't just nostalgia trips, they could be modern, exciting, and relevant. And now, the side-scrolling brawler lives on with Marvel Cosmic Invasion, carrying forward everything fans love about classic arcade beat-em-ups: tight combat, vibrant visuals, chaotic co-op, but with a modern Marvel twist. Players can team up online or in person, picking from a roster of Marvel heroes to face waves of cosmic enemies. From the design to the polish, it's clear that the spirit of the Golden Age arcades is alive and well, but evolved for a new generation. What makes Cosmic Invasion special isn't just the nostalgia, it's how it honors the legacy of arcade brawlers. From Kung Fu Master to Double Dragon, Final Fight, TMNT, and the indie revival, while injecting new life into a genre that's never truly gone away. From dimly lit arcades in 1984 to living rooms, indie screens, and modern consoles, side-scrolling brawlers have spanned 4 decades. They faced decline, reinvention, and revival, and yet they endure. From coin ops to consoles, from tribute games and Marvel Cosmic Invasion, one thing is clear: the side-scrolling beat-em-up still packs the hardest punch.